Hello, and a good Erev Shabbos. It's good to be back with everyone, and I'm glad we have this opportunity to communicate and talk with each other. If those that are listening, we do our weekly sound check. If you can just send me a message and let me know that, in fact, you hear the sound, I know I won't be talking to myself for the next few minutes. So before we begin, let me just get one message. Either you can give me a thumbs up, or you can put it in the comments below, either on Facebook or on YouTube, and we shall get started. Well, there we go. Yes, the sound is good. Thank you, my dear friends, for joining. And again, I want to remind you that we are doing something different now, and that is if during the course of our conversation, you have a question that you want to ask and you would like to have some clarity or further conversation, please either text it to me on my phone, or you can put it in the comments section either on Facebook Live or on YouTube Live. And we will then get to at least one question at the end of the session. So let's all take a deep breath and wish each other a good Erev Shabbos. In just a few hours, Shabbos will begin. And, Shabbos is always a very special day. It's always a time of taking a breath in, reflecting on the past week, and trying to use all the positive energy from the previous week for going forward. And if that is so for every Shabbos, this particular Shabbos is so vital, so critical, and so necessary for us as Jewish people. The last 24 hours in the Jewish world has been a roller coaster. Not only an emotional roller coaster, but a spiritual roller coaster. And let me bring it home to us in Bucks County, personalize it, but the same is for Jews throughout the entire world. Yesterday, I was getting ready. I was doing the last minute preparations for our Lag BaOmer event, our Lag BaOmer barbecue. And it was really exciting because for over a year, we never were able to really get together as a community. Now, thank God, with the advances of medical technology, and since it was an outdoor event, we were able to slowly bring people together in a very controlled situation, a very controlled environment. Excuse me, my friends, I have some allergies. A very controlled environment. We were able to do it the right way. And it was very exciting. Of course, it's Lag BaOmer, so the only thing that was really on my mind that may be a glitch to all this is the rain. And those of you in Bucks County know that when Lubavitch does something on Lag BaOmer, it's a 50% chance it's going to rain. And that's what's on my mind as I'm doing all these last-minute preparation. Then I get a phone call from a friend and says, Rabbi, says, are we on? I said, of course we're on. You know, we never stop for rain. I said, no, that's not what I mean. He said, did you hear the news? I said, I know. What are you talking about? And of course, he shared with me the tragic news that came out of Israel about the loss of so much life at the Lag BaOmer celebration in the northern city of Miron. And I just froze, literally froze. I froze in addition to the fact of the tragedy that was unfolding, was the fact that it took place in Miron. Lag BaOmer was supposed to be the time of celebration and rejoicing. This day on the Jewish calendar was set aside for thousands of years as a day that we celebrated the cessation of death. And here, once again, tragedy struck. So let me give a little context. The reason why we celebrate Lag BaOmer is because thousands of years ago, there was a Jewish sage. His name was Rabbi Akiva, one of the greatest sages of all time. And he had 24,000 students. Now, 24,000 students are a lot. But considering that he began his career when he was 40, and before 40, he didn't even know anything about his Jewish roots, And the fact that he was able to build himself up spiritually and create such a following was phenomenal. It took a lot of work, a lot of commitment. And then 1 year after Passover, there was a pandemic that really wiped out his entire student body. And after going through the pandemic of the past year, we can understand how a disease can go so quickly and kill so many people. And here, Rabbi Akiva, his life's work of building up this body of this institutional knowledge is completely wiped out. And every day more students are dying until the day of Lag BaOmer, the 18th day of Iyar, when that plague stopped. And he was left with 5 students. That day, when death stopped and there was the feeling of survival, became a day of celebration every year. That's the context. And the reason why Jewish people, so many thousands of Jews, go up to the northern city of Miron is because that's where one of his 5 remaining students are buried, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. So here you have thousands of people around the world, hundreds of thousands of Jews around the world. I don't know how many thousands of Jews in Miron celebrating this great idea of life and moving on from tragedy, when all of a sudden, boom, there's another tragedy. A tragedy that is probably the largest tragedy that happened in Israel in current time of this type of tragedy. And it begs a question. It forces us to reflect. It forces us to ask the question of how do these things happen? And when any time something like this happens, always the question is, where is God? How can we believe in God? And this wasn't an act of terror. It wasn't even an act of domestic violence. It was what we call a freak accident, or maybe they'll figure out why it happened. But this is definitely an act of God. Here you have thousands of people of faith going to celebrate the greatest student of faith, Rabbi Akiva, and his student, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And at that place, at that time, death strikes, tragedy strikes. This accident happens. And this is the question, a challenge of faith. Is this the God we believe in that allows these type of things to happen? People who are demonstrating their faith are struck by such a seamless, senseless act of loss of life. This is a very heavy topic, and it's not a topic that I can cover in the context of the few minutes that we're together today. A few weeks ago, one of my children told me, "Hey, Todd, remember, you call this sermonettes. Why does it take so long? Call it a sermon or a class." I got the message to try to keep these things a little shorter. And I'll keep this idea very short and to the point, which of course will need to be elaborated in a larger conversation at a different date. But this is the question. Our faith is challenged when these type of things happen. And as I mentioned, not by others, not by other enemies or even fellow Jews, all in God's hands. How? Why bring so much suffering and pain to so many people? So how do we approach this in a nutshell? There's 2 ways, there's 2 responses typically when these type of things happen. Don't question, just accept would be one approach. Another approach is don't accept, just question. In other words, you would think, don't question, just accept. This is the way of God. This is what God wants, just accept it and don't ask any questions. Another person will say, why not? Why should I just accept it? I am going to ask and question and continue to question. And I want to ask you a question now, all my fellow listeners. What would you think would be the approach of a person of faith? Option 1, don't question, just accept. Or option 2, don't accept, just question. Typically, we would attach to a person of faith option 1. A person of faith will say, accept, have faith that God has a reason. Don't question. But in fact, my friends, that is not the way a person of faith should approach this. A person of faith approaches this a different way. It's not either don't question or just accept, and it's not don't accept, just question. There's a third way, and that is accept and question. Accept what has happened, but continue to question. And in fact, if you really are a person of faith, it is only when you accept and have faith in the presence of God that you actually have a legitimate question. The only way we can really question God and question what was going on and maybe not find an answer, but continue to question, the question only arises when you have faith and when you have faith in the presence of God. And let me explain what I mean. I learned this lesson from two people, what we would call a non-observant Jew, or basically a person who left their faith, and from the Rebbe, who I would call a master of faith. A master of faith is an individual who masters the true quality of faith. And both these individuals taught me what faith should really be. Let me begin with the first. It's a friend of mine. This goes back about 25 years, 30 years. A friend of mine who grew up in an observant home, but left and decided to reject the faith that he grew up with. And we were just friends because we knew each other. He got married, had a little baby, who after 2 years died from an unusual disease. And I maintained a friendship, although we lived in two different parts of the world. And I met him about 2 months after the death of his little child, which was about a month after the high holidays. And I asked him, how you doing? He says, I'll tell you the truth. These high holidays were a roller coaster for me. I said, what do you mean? He says, well, the first day of Rosh Hashanah, I decided not to go to shul. Because why should I go to shul? Who says there's a God? The second day of Rosh Hashanah, I went to shul and I cried like a little baby, praying to God to bring me healing. I asked him, I will call him David. I said, David, you? As long as I know you, you don't even believe in God. Then he said, you'll be surprised, he tells me, Yudi, that in fact, I'm part of a support group. And I am actually the one who's trying to teach and help people have a faith in God. And he looks at me like very quizzical, like you can tell that you're surprised. And he tells me the words like this. He said, yes, without God, it is even harder to accept the death of my child. He tells me if there is no God in this world and everything is just random, then I have no one to be upset at. He says it's just random, then my child's death is just random and there's really no purpose and there's even nowhere to turn to. But because I have developed a faith in God, a presence in a greater power, he says I may not keep Shabbat, but at least I believe, if I can't feel, that there is a purpose. I don't know what the purpose, and I continue to question God, what is the purpose? But at least I believe there is a purpose. There is a place to turn to question. And this taught me that lesson, that it's only when you have faith and you accept the presence of a greater force and power in this world that you have now the ability to question and the way to question. The second aspect of this idea is a very important message that I learned from the Rebbe many times. And as I mentioned, the Rebbe was a master of faith. And in addition to all the great spiritual qualities of a Rebbe, but to me, as a chassid, as a Jew, he demonstrated, he modeled to us what faith means. Not necessarily by teaching about faith, but by living faith. You were able to visualize, what does a person of faith actually believe? And in fact, what I have for you today is a little video clip that I will share. It's just over a minute. The Rebbe is speaking to children in Yiddish, but there are subtitles, and he's speaking to children on the day of Lag BaOmer, a number of years ago, obviously. But it's interesting that the Rebbe chose to teach this message on the day of Lag BaOmer. And on this Lag BaOmer of this year, this message becomes so much more critical and so much more important. I will play the video, I will share it on the screen, and then I will continue. So let me share the screen and listen to these very timely words. Let me press play, and here we go.
as kol mokem shgolu shchinu imore as nieder schat has gescholle as yid gefindt sich in gol und der Rebster gefindt sich in sein Palace in der Himmel und guckt zu von eben, was tut sich mit der Jiden und gibt den Brache, was schienen der Jechol nie dort in der Luft. Der Ruf zu ist, dass der Rebster gefindt sich, und dort muss gefindt sich jeder ist. Und Bishas Ayid gefindt sich in Golus, ich schine immer, gefindt sich dort der Rebster zusammen mit ihm in dem Golus. Nicht gefindt sich dort nicht. Wie seitliches Inyan, nur gefindt sich dort in der Neffen, was beholt zur Rosso, leid so. Bishas Ayiden wird eng, nach Masenine von Golus, zieht es der Engkeit in Ruchnis, oder a viele Begashmius, ist a demels auf der Rebester, a sehr hat dieselbe Leiden, mit derselbe Schwertkeit, mit derselbe Engkeit, wo das ist so raus von Akiden, die Golus, was für a Golus soll nicht sein, sie das Edis, oder wie der Rest der Golus in Bovel, ist beholt so raus und leid so, wo der Funde sich verstandig, auf wie viel mehr hat es Jura, der Hilfe von der Lebensten, auf Fieber kommen die alle Schwierigkeiten.
And that, my friends, is a message that I learned time and time from the Rebbe. And that message was, if I can just get myself back here, and that message, give me a second. There we go. And that message is that true faith, when we understand that when there's tragedy that happens in this world, when there's tragedy that happens to the people in this world, because we believe that God is with us and God is present, therefore we know that God is also observing this pain and giving us the ability to overcome the challenges. We don't believe in a God that created the world and just let it go. We don't believe in a God that is distant. If we did believe in a God that is distant, there's no one to question and nothing to question. It's because God is present and God is part of our experience to the extent, as the Rebbe explained, God suffers with us, but because God is engaged and there with us, now we have a connection to understand the presence of a greater force, although we don't necessarily understand why those things will happen. And that becomes the challenge of faith. And that becomes the way we approach these issues in life. We don't rejoice, but we're comforted by the fact that we know that God is present and engaged in everything that we do. And therefore, at the same time that he brings things into our lives that are beyond our understanding, he gives us the power, the ability to withstand those challenges and to overcome them. Almost like a parent who offers or who gives his children or her children tough love. If you are giving your children a punishment or a discipline, despite the fact that you know it's going to be tough on them, but because you truly love them, you understand that you have to present this challenge to them. Otherwise, they won't learn. They won't get stronger. So you see your child suffering, but you see your child suffering as a result of you trying to bring them into a different level. You ever tried to teach your child how to ride a bike? You teach your child how to ride a bike. If you're going to hold that bike because you don't want to see your little kinderlach, your little son or boy, your little Davidel or Michael or Janet, and you don't want to see them falling off, they're never going to learn how to ride a bike. So you have to go through that painful experience with them of watching them fall and cry and get scratched. But because you are a loving parent and you're offering this tough love, it's tough love. And because the love is there, the children will have the ability to bounce back. So what does faith teach us? Accept, and then you have the right framework in which to question and to move forward. We must never be able to answer why people suffer, but we can always believe that the suffering and the pain that comes to people is a result of a loving God, a God who is with us, and a God who simultaneously gives us the ability to move forward. And this, my dear friend, needs to be the message of our Shabbos this week. It's not coincidental that this occurred on this day of Lag BaOmer. As the Rebbe pointed out, this is a message from Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. This is the teaching of the very person at whose graveside they were celebrating Lag BaOmer, so that we understand, because we have faith, then we have the context to question and the context to move forward. So how do I recommend that we move forward? What's our call to action? Our call to action is as follows. We are just getting out of a devastating pandemic that really changed our lives in almost a heartbeat. We were taught a year ago that you can have plans and you can think of things, how you're going to live out your next day and your next week, but something comes into your life and changes it. We don't really know what tomorrow will bring. And as we're moving out of this pandemic and kind of getting back into our routine, we were taught this lesson again yesterday. All these individuals that went up to Miron to celebrate could never imagine that they wouldn't be coming back to their loved ones. Every year, except last year, you go up to Miron, you celebrate, you're energized, you come back home, and you're very engaged in your spiritual and hopefully all other aspects of life. But this year, for 42 people, that didn't happen. And the countless of people that were injured as well. So this once again teaches us how we must value every day. It also happened during the Omer when we count every day, as we mentioned last week. Every day counts. We must constantly reinforce the message we learned a year ago and was brought home again yesterday. How to value each day for what that day is. Don't push off for tomorrow. Don't push off for next week, a reconciliation with someone, a sharing of a good thought, a sharing of a doing of a good deed, doing something that will uplift someone. You know, today I'm tired, I'm under the weather, I'm sick. I'll call them tomorrow. Don't push it off for tomorrow. Not because, God forbid, tomorrow you may not be here. That's a negative way of looking at it. Don't push it off for tomorrow, because if it came into your mind today, today is the day to do that. Tomorrow, you'll have other opportunities for other things. but value days of your life. That's what the Omer teaches us, counting the Omer. That's what Lag BaOmer teaches us. That's what the pandemic should have taught us. That's what yesterday's tragedy should hopefully teach us. So, my dear friends, I don't know how much we can celebrate on today's Lag BaOmer, but we can definitely observe this day and commemorate with the following suggestion. In memory of all those who lost their lives yesterday, in honor of the families whose lives were broken by the sudden death by a sibling, a parent, or a spouse. So in memory of those who were lost, in honor of those who were suffering, let's do something spiritual and don't push it off. Accept a mitzvah, a hidur mitzvah as we call it, maybe do a mitzvah a little bit better. They went to a spiritual experience in Miron. Let's complete their experiences. Maybe this Shabbat, spend some more time with family. Spend some more time learning Torah. During the week, maybe put on tefillin an extra day, give a little extra tzedakah, join the shir, and women, definitely, those Shabbos candles on time before sunset. There's so many different things that we can do. There's so many different things that we push off. Let's value the day. We can't answer the question, but the same faith that allows us to question encourages us to move forward with the answers that we could answer, or the questions that we could answer. And that's the question of how can I become a better person? That's a question that comes from the same faith that teaches us that everything is valuable, everything has purpose. And that's a question that we can answer. And in honor of those who lost their life, let's make sure we do answer. Have a good Shabbos. Have an inspiring Shabbos. And as we mentioned, let's see if there's any questions that came through. In the meantime, those who like to wish a good Shabbos to the community, now's a good time to do so. Oh, I have a question here on my text. Let me type it in so everybody could see it. Okay, let me see if I can bring it up on the screen. Okay, let me move my notes away. Here we can get to this question. How can I accept that? It's so hard. Yes. Yes, Juliet, that's a very good question. This is all beautiful. And even if we want to believe and accept that which I've taught, but it's hard. How do we accept all that? And I have an answer for you. And the answer is that faith in the Jewish tradition, the Hebrew word for faith is emunah. And the word emunah, as the Tanya explains, does not only mean acceptance or believing in something. Emunah comes from the word training. In fact, to be a believing person, you have to work at it. It is hard. And even when you are at ease with certain ideas one day, next day, like yesterday, you have a challenge and you're again uneasy about it. So the important thing to know about faith is that it's not either you have it or you don't. Faith are ideas that we need to work on. And Jewish faith teaches us that God is present in our life. And as the Rebbe explained in the clip, God suffers with us. Now, that may not be an easy idea to accept, but at least it's a context in which to train our understanding, to try to understand, and more important, to try to connect to that truth. Some days will be easier, some days will be harder, like any exercise that we have to do. But yes, Juliet, it is hard, and we have to work on it. And don't get down, any one of us, if one day you feel like, no, it's hard to believe in this, that I don't accept that. That's okay. Tomorrow's another day, but at least you know the ideas of Jewish faith, the ideas that we are to work at. All right, my dear friends, let's go around the table. Wish every good people good Shabbos. Who do we have? Okay, Mara, I'm just going to go through all of them. Mara, Gorsman Volpe, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom to you, Mara. Sandra wants to wish everyone a good Shabbos. Good Shabbos to you, Sandra. Eve M. Good Shabbos community. Good Shabbos, Eve, from the community. Nice to see you. Welcome aboard. Who do we have next? Sherry. Sherry, Shabbat Shalom, healthy and peaceful. Amen. Should be a healthy and peaceful Shabbos for everyone here in the Holy Land of Eretz Yisrael. Who do we have next? Layla Badaj, Wiser Badajan. Needed to hear this. Always inspired. Thank you. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom to you as well, to the Badajan family. Tell everyone I said hi. We have one more. Harris, Shabbat Shalom from Karen and Harris. Shabbat Shalom to you all. And as usual, we'll wait another few seconds. If anyone else wants to wish the community a good Shabbos, now is the time to do so. Otherwise, I think if there are no more comments and no more greetings of Shabbos, I want to wish you all a good Shabbos, a meaningful Shabbos, a peaceful Shabbos, an inspiring Shabbos. As I said earlier, these are heavy topics. Hopefully, I gave you a little bit of context to think about over the next 25 hours. In the meantime, make sure we appreciate the day, we enjoy the day, and in honor and in memory of our brothers and sisters in Israel that have gone through this tragedy, let's do something good and not push off something good that we were planning to do. So as I sign off, running this technical stuff myself, good Shabbos, regards, love you all. See you next week.